I'm really happy to see you all here. I hope you had a great lunch. I want to introduce you to the next presentation. Will WebXR replace native XR? And I want to welcome to the stage Jonathan, the CEO and founder of Wonderland Engine, and Lydia, the CEO of the Fitness Resort. Please give them a round of applause.
Do you want to go first?
All right, welcome everybody.
Hi.
I'm excited to see how the interest in WebXR is growing year to year. And I think the attendance in the room here is a great testament to that. Thanks all for deciding to go for fast instead of lunch and come to this talk instead. And I hope you enjoyed our clickbaity title, Will WebXR replace native XR? It's probably somewhere along the lines of, will AI replace us all, right? But yeah, so the most burning question in your head right now is probably, well, will WebXR replace native XR? And so you can all go to lunch. I'll make it real quick. No, not all of it. But yeah, if you're still interested, I'm Jonathan Hale, the CEO of Wonderland. We build the Wonderland engine, and I'm joined by Lydia today, talking about her experience with WebXR at the Fitness Resort. This talk is going to be split in 3 big parts. First is an introduction into what is WebXR, why should you care, and how does it work. Then Lydia is going to be presenting her experience with WebXR at the Fitness Resort. And finally, I'm going to tell you something about frameworks and tools so you can get started at home immediately. And you can guess where the sponsored part comes in. All right, so what is WebXR? Very simply put, WebXR is just VR and AR on the web. You can use web technology to build XR apps on the web, just like you can build a website or a web app. And so it runs on anything that runs a browser, and that's all the major headsets, VR devices, AR devices, desktop, mobile, pretty much anything. So that sounds great, but why would anyone want to do that, right? WebXR comes with 4 huge advantages. The first one is it's an open platform. You don't need to ask for any permission, anyone for any permission, to publish your content. That means you don't go through App Store creation, you just take your files and push them to a web server, and you end up with a link that you can share with everyone. And shareability is the next big advantage. You just create a link, you share that via social media, or you create a QR code, and people can scan the QR code, maybe at a poster outside for advertisement, packaging, anything. And then the third big advantage is people can just scan that QR code really, really accessibly, directly hop into the experience, no need to download or install anything. The biggest and most awesome advantage, especially for us as developers, though, is it's cross-platform. You deploy your app once, one single application, and it runs everywhere, across all VR devices, even mobile or desktop. So it's not only cross-device, but it's cross-XR, runs on multiple media. And most hardware vendors do indeed support it already. And more interest is coming from the hardware manufacturers every day. We just announced that we're working with Qualcomm to bring Wonderland Engine to Snapdragon Spaces. Okay, so this sounds really familiar, right? Like you all know OpenXR, and this just sounds like OpenXR, right? Cross devices and everything. So is it just OpenXR? WebXR actually has one big advantage. While they're both, WebXR and OpenXR, are both abstractions for display and input to XR devices, WebXR runs on all platforms. OpenXR, on the other hand, if you want to deploy to Quest 2, you have to deploy to Android. If you want to deploy to iOS, you need to package again for iOS and go through the App Store curation there. If you want to deploy to an HTC VR device, you need to package again. And finally, if you want to get to Apple Mixed Reality, well, you know, you have to build it all over again. But now we can actually build our apps once, support all devices, even future devices, especially the one everyone's talking about. And if they announce support for WebXR, you know that there's a bunch of very happy developers who are already on that platform. OK, so that sounds a bit like magic, right? How can we support future devices? How can we support everything all at the same time, right? Well, WebXR adds another layer of abstraction, basically. We usually have the hardware, and you communicate with the hardware through drivers that expose APIs. For example, OpenGL for graphics, OpenXR for input abstraction and display to device, file I/O, USB, anything you can imagine. Browsers then, on top of that, implement standardized APIs. For example, WebGL or WebGPU to communicate with the GPU for graphics display. We have the WebXR device API, which enables getting the input from the device and rendering to the device. And we have JavaScript and WebAssembly, which allow general CPU processing, and many, many more, like Web USB, for example, and many things. You can basically do anything on the web. You can do it native. On top of that, basically, your framework, your WebXR app, will consume these APIs and then basically interact with the device in a very abstract way. Any API, any device you can imagine. Cool. So let's get into the state of WebXR, give you an update of what the industry looks like right now. And I think the coolest thing is that we have a lot of companies now coming into the space, all in on WebXR, like Paradowski Creatives, for example, or the Fitness Resort. We have RP1, and many, many more companies that are going commercially all into WebXR. Here you see, like in terms of visual fidelity, Paradowski Creative is reaching new scopes of complexity and also visual fidelity. This is a small excerpt from their final level of The Escape Artist. If you want to know more about their upcoming title, go and follow them on LinkedIn. And now I give the word to Lydia, talking about the Fitness Resort.
Thank you, Jonathan. So, we're clearly trying to convince you that WebXR is worth checking out. And certainly at the Fitness Resort, we're all in. We are purely based on WebXR. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about that as a kind of real-world user case for showing how WebXR really can be a viable place to build your company and to produce amazing content for users. So I'm going to talk a little bit about complexity. We heard a bit from Jonathan about the upcoming Escape Artist and the way they're pushing the boundaries. Monetization, we're a company, we're commercial, we want to make ourselves successful and sustainable, and the user base. So in terms of complexity, for us, the first part is the building block that everything is built on, which is the engine. And actually, we started in Unity, and it didn't work for us. It wasn't cutting the mustard. We needed something more specialist. We knew that WebXR is where we wanted to be. Enter stage left, the Wonderland engine, thank goodness. And we had to rebuild it all in that. We are about a year into our startup journey, and everything that we're doing is live. We are real-time, real-world right now developing our game. And so for us, the complexity around using the Wonderland engine is that we need our developers to not only be proficient in WebXR, but they also need to know the Wonderland engine. We need to be able to leverage the most out of these technologies because we are really pushing the boundary and the scope of what we want to offer to our future customers. Another one is then performance optimization and 3D game design principles. So this is what all game developers have to balance between high quality visuals, engaging gameplay mechanics, and optimal performance. So actually, WebXR, we access the same hardware as native VR. So in that sense, we have the same performance challenges with high frame rate and stereo rendering, for example, that native VR would do. Another one for us is the accessibility and cross-platform compatibility. Now, this is where I think WebXR really shines, and Jonathan, you went into a lot of more detail about those amazing perks, as it were, of being purely on the web. So for us, it's the fact that it is accessible on any device, as you described. Lots of hardware is now supporting the browsers. And for us, that's excellent. It means our accessibility to our user base is bigger. In terms of being able to deploy updates, it's quick. We don't have to have separate versions for different types of apps. Of course, with native VR, those ecosystems that they've got with the app stores, okay, it's standardized, there is some safety there. But for us, the compromise, if it even is one, of moving over to WebXR to have that innovation was well worth it for us. So all our eggs are in the WebXR basket. And kind of coupled with that is the future-proofing. Again, Jonathan, you mentioned about how more and more hardware is supporting those browsers. Well, happy days for us. We welcome that. And any advances in technology around that mean that our game is immediately supported going forward. So we are all for that. But we are here to make money, let's not lie. We are a commercial company. And for us, we are a pioneer, really, in this space to be saying that we are WebXR and solely WebXR. You would normally, perhaps when you have a startup, look at who's gone before us, what models have they tried, how could we innovate and improve on what's already out there. But for us, there is no cookie cutter solution. There's no off-the-shelf option. We are really trying to pioneer this as a business. There are a couple of players in the space that we kind of draw on, but and I'll come on to those, but really we're having to look at traditional gaming, mobile gaming, digital advertising, other places to see what do we think we could lean on and draw upon in this new space. So we've got Zesty Market. They are proving that there is an advertising appetite for VR users. They're demonstrating that they can generate revenue for those advertisers by getting them in front of VR users. They have 300,000 active monthly users, for example. And HeyVR.io, their coins-based system now is enabling users to have in-app purchases, which is obviously great news for commercial companies, but it also is supporting the developers because, of course, there is a balance between users and developers, and it's allowing developers to monetize their content, which, again, from our point of view, is music to our ears, and we know both those companies very well. But for us, we're again actively looking at what are our commercialization strategies for the fitness resort. And there's a bunch, is the answer. And I can't tell you right now which one will be our main one for the future. But it's things like subscriptions, like a monthly subscription. We're based on fitness, so we're all about making fitness fun, accessible, and social. Through WebXR. So maybe this could mimic a kind of monthly gym membership style, but then it could be more focused on in-app purchases. Maybe that's where we're going to really connect with our users. What about unlockable content? That's another revenue model that we've seen work in other places that we could bring into WebXR. Advertising, Zesty are doing it. We have basically created an online space, billboards as it were, where advertisers could come in. And then things like e-commerce integrations. We really want to develop this where you could be purchasing both virtual and real world products at the same time, for example. And then licensing and partnerships. Again, we see this as a huge growth area where we would hope to develop branded experiences, which again can generate revenue for us, but also be a real value added for those brands with their customers. So watch this space. We'll tell you what works, maybe next year. But none of this means anything unless we have a user base. And I think we're demonstrating, and hopefully a lot of the talks here will be demonstrating that there is a growing user base. For example, you've got Archery Dungeon, Archery Training, and our own prototype SkiFit 365. It's on HeyVR.io right now. It's free. Please go and check it out. Between those three alone, we've got nearly 3 million views since release. These are not insignificant numbers. So we know that with the likes of White Rabbit and us, for example, that there are companies out there who we are producing content that is of interest and that people keep coming back to. And also something in general with WebXR is there's a broad target audience. WebXR lends itself to a lot, whether it's the gaming enthusiasts or for us, hopefully also the fitness enthusiasts, but also business, health, education. There's a lot of ways that WebXR can enhance content for those industries. So again, for us, where we've put all our eggs in the WebXR basket, it's encouraging because there is so much potential, so much potential. But there are adoption challenges. I can't gloss over that. We're still in the early adoption phase, and that's on two parts, the users, the consumers, the customers, and then the developers. So in terms of the customers, if you don't have the hardware, you cannot access us. So we need as many headsets out there as possible. And even with that as well, especially for us, we're obviously wanting to focus on, say, fitness enthusiasts and people wanting to look for innovative ways to get fit at home. They may not own a headset. So we need that education to get out there that it's not scary, it's not weird, you're not going to feel sick. Get in there and actually you will have the best workout of your life. And on the developer side, for us, we're kind of a niche within a niche. You know, we are WebXR, but we're also Wonderland engine. We need more developers that can really utilize those two technologies in order for mass adoption on both parts. So this is the big one, content creation, and I know RP1 talked about this as well in their talk. Content creation is everything. If you look at how social media grew, it's because of casual content creators. We need people who can demand certain types of content from, say, us as a company and wider. And that's really going to drive the innovation. And equally, on the other hand, we need the developers to show what's possible with the technology so that the users know they can ask for it. So for me, the summary is that it's a rich ecosystem. That's what's going to make WebXR be able to take over almost from everything from native VR. And that is a combination of the hardware, the platforms, the engine, and the content. So do check us out. There's some QR codes here for me and also for the fitness resort. We are on the Wonderland stand doing our demo, which is an early prototype before our closed beta phase. So I'm going to hand over to Jonathan for the final part of the talk now.
Thank you very much, Lydia. So I bet your fingers are itching now to get started in writing the first line of code in WebXR and try it out. So I'm going to give you an introduction in how does the workflow work around WebXR, and like which tools can you use, which frameworks. And effectively, all frameworks in WebXR work the same way. In some way, they will produce a set of JavaScript, HTML, CSS, GLB, and maybe even WebAssembly files that you can then use and upload to any hosting service. Anything that supports static hosting will be a good candidate here. For example, you can even use GitLab pages or GitHub pages. You can upload to AWS, Google Cloud, Netlify, anything you can imagine that provides website hosting. Frameworks can be categorized in roughly 3 different groups. We have the code-only frameworks. You literally write everything in code and place your 3D objects also in code. You will, though, get visual feedback immediately when you run the app, which usually happens within a second or less. And then we have the cloud-based engines. They usually provide an editor that runs inside the browser, and you upload all of your 3D assets, your code, everything inside this editor, and then you can provide. I have Amazon Sumerian, which is already sunset here still, because unfortunately, there is not many of these in this category yet. And finally, we have development platforms that you download and install. Unity, for example, also has an HTML5 target, and Wonderland engine also falls into this category. All of these produce the said HTML files and web files that you can then just upload to any web server. Of course, this is a sponsored talk, so we'll go into detail with one of these. Wonderland Engine is a development platform for VR, AR, and 3D on the web. You can see it here. Basically, if you click the green button at the top, your project will immediately launch into the browser or even on a headset or mobile phone. Of course, we support all the devices, but our focus is performance and rapid development workflow. Our focus on performance means that we build everything from scratch, designed for the web and its performance characteristics, using WebAssembly and highly optimized WebGL2 shaders so that you can build more on the same devices. Our focus on workflow means that we package your entire scene, pretty much no matter how big it is, in less than a second, so that you have a rapid iterative workflow. You can just make a change in your code or in your scene or to your assets, and it will automatically reload the browser for you and reflect the changes you just made within a second. You don't even have to take off AR headsets, for example. And finally, it's made for the web. Literally from the ground up designed for the web means that we can work with any web API or anything in the JavaScript ecosystem, any JavaScript or TypeScript library that you know, and all the tools work with Wonderland Engine. All right, summarizing, WebXR is XR on the web. Basically, web apps, but for XR. The current state of the industry is basically defined by a lot of companies coming into this space and taking the leap to go fully commercially depending on WebXR. We have new hardware vendors being super interested in WebXR and supporting a common ecosystem that like developers can share and automatically produce content for all devices at the same time. And finally, we have new browsers joining the space. Volvic, for example, is providing, as a new browser for VR, a great base to run WebXR apps on almost any VR device. And with frameworks and tools, we saw any of them just produce web files that you can upload to any static hosting service. And then thank you for your attention. I want to get rid of some final notes here. We're at booth 605. You can witness the fitness resort demo there. It's literally just like go entrance and then to the right, and you'll find us there. We have a WebXR meetup tomorrow, so if you don't have plans for lunch yet, come join us at the Hilton. It's just across. We have about 10 spots left, and it's important that you register, so please use the QR code, as our catering obviously expects a certain number of people. You'll also find this through Google, so moving on, questions and answers.
We have time for 2 questions. Yes, sir.
So the last couple of years, I've built up 100 pieces of WebXR for Yahoo. But to do that, we need to make sure that we have a beautiful experience if you launch on a headset, or we need a beautiful experience if you launch on a desktop.
Yes.
You talk a little about how Wonderland Engine supports having 2 different user experiences depending on the fundamental platform you're attacking.
So I guess the biggest challenge of something like that, first of all, WebXR enables you to target the high-end kind of like VR people, the crowd that has the headset already, and also for big brands, allow like targeting anyone with a smartphone, right? You can have this cross-device experience. The biggest challenge there becomes like, how do you abstract the input and like interaction in a way that allows people on desktop using their thumbs, but then people in VR using even maybe hand tracking or controllers, right? And we provide some of those abstractions, but the space is early, and obviously that is a challenge. And that does not go away. But at least you don't have 2 apps anymore. It's a single experience.
Yes, go ahead.
Yes, so I love the vision of WebXR as a platform and being able to deploy to all sorts of different devices, being able to avoid having a whole separate install process. As a user of WebXR, I have found in practice that the browser adds a layer of friction. You know, even if you know what you're seeking out, you have to sort of navigate to it through the browser. If you're trying to share it with other people, there's this extra step, especially if they have to download a third-party browser as well. So I'm curious, in your experiences, has that been a barrier to adoption, say, of fitness resort? Are you seeing developments in the field that'll make this easier going forward and less of a barrier?
Well, you've absolutely highlighted again one of the factors that demonstrates how early WebXR is as an industry. Those friction points, I'm not kidding, the amount of meetings we've had trying to finesse that user journey, trying to identify all the different ways where they might have first come across the fitness resort, i.e. on their phone, so a device that's not the headset, and then trying to take their money in an easy way that isn't you typing in the headset, and then trying to get you over to the headset, into the browser, into the experience. When we've figured it out and finalized it, we'll let you know, basically. I think it's so great that we're here being able to demonstrate that this is a live challenge for us that we are navigating. And Hey VR have been brilliant that they are hosting our game, and we're working with them on that. There's all sorts of issues around data protection, getting their email address, getting all their information, let alone obviously their payment details. So I think your experience is not unusual, and all I can say is that as the technology develops, that will get easier.
Adding to that, I think with native XR, you have exactly the same problem.
Yes.
But plus, you have to get people to actually download the experience, wait, run it, and therefore, I think it's shared. It maybe sounds like there's a lot of friction, but it's a huge improvement on top of what you have with native.
Hopefully it'll be behavior changing, so people just get used to it, and there'll be like a couple of steps, and it'll just be, oh, that's how it always is now, hopefully in the future.
Great. Thank you both very much. Thank you.